Special shout out to my mom. Hi, Mom. So the first question, what new skill or knowledge have you learned in the last couple of years? How has your ministry changed over time? So when I was an undergraduate at the University of the South in Sewanee, Tennessee, I double majored in music and French. I have a gift for foreign languages. I'm very interested in them. I like to study one or two of them all the time. So about 2 or 3 years ago, I decided I was going to perfect my Spanish. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the app that you can get on your cell phone called Duolingo, but I have like a 320-day streak in Espanol on Duolingo. My husband, Father Tom, has a parish in Plymouth, Indiana. It's a combined parish, St. Thomas, Santo Tomas. So he has a Latino congregation, and I have the opportunity to go down there from time to time and celebrate the Eucharist and practice my Spanish that I have been perfecting over the last couple of years. One of the things that this has opened my eyes to is issues around immigration and undocumented workers, which are all over the place, as you know, and the dilemmas that we face as a country, not only about how we treat undocumented aliens and strangers in our country, but also how we support the ones that are charged with carrying out our laws. It's not a dualistic issue. We support and pray for all of them, and it's a sticky, complicated matter that I have had an increasing appreciation for over the last couple of years. Another language that I have also spent some time with over the last 3 years is Hebrew. I was introduced to Rabbi Karen Campanez, who is the Reformed Jewish rabbi at Temple Bethel in South Bend, and she invited me to attend a Hebrew class that she was offering. I'm the only Christian there. The rest of the class is Jewish, but we have had a wonderful time learning to read the Bible in Hebrew and also exchanging information about our different faiths with each other. So this has helped me to expand my outreach to interfaith conversation. We also have a relationship with the imam at the mosque in South Bend. So I've learned a lot about different faiths and how we can cooperate together on issues of social justice. Rabbi Karen and I worked together with other faith leaders in our community. Indiana is one of 5 states in our country that does not have a hate crimes bill, and so we have been working to lobby politicians for the enactment of such a thing, and we've done this as an interfaith collaborative effort, and that has been very inspiring. We've also been working around issues of racial injustice and racial reconciliation. We've attended together race study circles that are put on by the Human Rights Commission, where the thing that I have learned is that the people who really need to talk about racism are white people, and they have a horrible time doing it. They don't know how to do it, and so I'm trying to learn how to facilitate those conversations in ways that are not threatening, or maybe only just a little bit threatening, so that you don't run screaming out of the room, but can still deal with the issues, which again are very complicated and sticky. What this has done in my parish is, because my own viewpoint is turning out into the community, my parish, the lay leaders have stepped up, and they are asking to be empowered to do things like pastoral care, to be empowered to preach. I have 3 licensed lay preachers that they each preach a couple of times a year. They want to be licensed to lead worship. And this will feed into the next question that I'm going to answer in a few minutes, and that is, what is the future of the church? And I think, to a large extent, it's these lay people that want to be empowered to do things that for years we have depended on clergy to do, but don't necessarily have to have clergy doing all the time, so that clergy can attend to the things that they are supposed to do. So I'll move to the next question, which is, how will you address the lack of clergy available for parishes, especially small parishes? So in northern Indiana, everything is small. We have maybe only 2 program-sized churches. The rest of the parishes are family size or pastoral size, and so that's what I'm used to working with. It is very difficult, if not impossible, to attract clergy to a diocese and you're only offering a half-time position. Nobody's going to move across the country for that. And so how do you help these parishes that cannot afford clergy or cannot afford full-time clergy? One of the things that we have done in northern Indiana that I could see very easily Southern Virginia doing is we developed our own formation program for priests and deacons. There are a number of resources to do that, but this has this has enabled us to form priests and deacons locally for work in the local parishes. This has been done, we do have Notre Dame University in our city, and so a lot of our candidates have gotten their theology degrees from Notre Dame with some supportive Anglican work from other scholar priests in our diocese. People have done work online. People have done distance learning where you do most of your work online, but maybe you have a few weeks throughout the year where you're in residence at some place like Nashotah House, which is very close to us. But we're looking for a number of different ways to empower clergy to get their education short of going off for a 3-year seminary program. Now, one of the things that you've got to be careful about when you do that is for those of us clergy who have gone away to 3-year seminary, we know how important having the community from day to day as we're being formed as priests. And so we have to look for ways to replicate that in these local formation programs. And we've found ways to do that in northern Indiana. So that is one situation. I mean, that's one possible solution. The other possible solution I brought with me is my husband Tom, who is a priest at Plymouth, the 2 parishes I mentioned, St. Thomas, Santo Tomas. Tom has a passion for small parishes, and he delights in looking for ways to connect them and to connect their resources so that they can get what they need. And so what I would see myself doing if I were bishop in this diocese is looking at each of the parishes that is without clergy and looking for the solutions. And they're going to be different on parish by parish basis, but then also looking at the larger picture of how to form our own clergy.
We can then open it up to your question.
If you ask me a question, I just would ask that you tell me your name and where you're from, and we don't get to leave until somebody asks a question. So. Yes?
Connor Alexander from St. Francis in Virginia Beach.
Okay.
You mentioned in your materials your DCDI training.
Yes.
And you were a trainer in Indiana.
Right.
How did that affect your ministry, both at the diocesan and at the parish level?
How did it affect my own personal ministry? Is that what you're asking?
And
okay.
what effect did it have on the whole diocese?
Okay, all right. So the ways that it affected me personally is.
Please repeat the question.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah. So the question is that is Alexander. Connor. Had asked me is that he had noticed in my materials that I'm a certified diocesan church development trainer. And so in my years of doing that in the Diocese of Northern Indiana, how did that impact my ministry and how did that impact the diocese? So I did that for 8 years. And the way that it impacted my own ministry is my parish became the guinea pig for all the things that we were trying to do. And so, it got to the point that whenever I tried to stand up to explain something to my vestry, they would roll their eyes and say, there she goes with the newsprint again. But we did see an impact at St. Paul's. St. Paul's was then able to very quickly see what their niche gift was. I believe that every parish has a niche gift that they do that only they can offer, and St. Paul's was able to discover that. So that's how it impacted my personal ministry. The impact that DCDI had on the whole diocese is we were gathering 4 times a year over a period of a weekend to learn the models and the frameworks and the kind of interventions that you would do with parishes so that they could become healthy and vital. And what happened is we began to root for each other. There was a connectedness that emerged in the midst of all of that, so that parishes were joyful and happy about successes, and then really lamented with parishes when there were failures. So it developed a kind of unity across the diocese that had not been there before. And we said to each other frequently that the best part about CDI was that we got to see each other and be with each other constantly. So that was good. So thank you. Yes.
You spent a lot of time in Indiana. How would it impact your life to come to Virginia?
All right, the question is, and who are you?
Suzanne, I go to
Okay, Suzanne from Breton Parish asked me, she noticed that I'd spent a lot of time in northern Indiana, and how would it impact me to move to southern Virginia? So I moved to northern Indiana in 2000 when my husband was recruited. He was a high school mathematics teacher and a computer network administrator at the time, and he was recruited by the Culver Academies, which is a college preparatory boarding school in Culver, Indiana. He was recruited to come and help them roll out their laptop program when they were giving laptops to every student. And so we moved here in 2000. Prior to that time, I had never been any further north than Nashville, Tennessee. Moving to northern Indiana was tremendous culture shock for me. And there were a lot of other things that were shocking too. I remember the first December that I was in northern Indiana. It started Thanksgiving week. It started snowing, and by the end of December, it had snowed 43 inches. And I looked at my husband over the breakfast table and said, just what the heck have you gotten us into up here? So that was the real shock. So changing where one lives after being there a while is difficult, but I am a Southerner at heart, and I would actually welcome the opportunity to move back to the South. Thank you. Yes, I'm sorry.
I'm Justin. I'm with the Canterbury Chaplaincy here at William & Mary.
Mm-hmm.
And my question is, what would you do to support young people, especially those in college, which is such a crucial time for us in pursuing our ministries, whether it be lay or day?
Right, thank you. So the question is, what would I do to support young people, especially people in college, to support their ministry, whether they're lay or ordained? And so I did have the opportunity to meet with your chaplain yesterday in the chapel, and that was very informative. I have some minimal experience myself with college chaplaincy, but only as the recipient of it. I've never operated as a college chaplain. My husband has done that in the boarding school environment. So one of the dangers that we face as a church, I think, is that if we do not find a way to empower young people to live out their baptismal promises on a daily basis, that once they move away from those college ministries, very often they will move away from the church if they are not given ways to continue church in their community environment where they land, and sometimes we don't get them back, and sometimes we only get them back when they're married and they have children, and they think, oh, well, we need to get the baby baptized, or we need to send the child to Sunday school. Oh, yes, I remember I was confirmed Episcopalian, so I'll go back to the Episcopal Church. I wouldn't want to depend on that. One of the things that we're doing in the Diocese of Northern Indiana is we have been selected to participate in a program that actually Virginia Theological Seminary is doing called Baptized for Life. It's funded by the Lilly Foundation, but it is teaching people in all generations how to live out their baptismal promises and how to live lives of meaning and purpose everywhere and all the time. And so they use the ancient catechumenate to form these people in their baptismal promises, and then for ways to live that out in the world. So as a bishop, I would want to keep in touch with the college chaplains and provide what is necessary to support them, be it my presence or funding or certainly time for conversation with me. I would want to be hearing from the young people. I understand that the youth, and when I say youth, I'm thinking more high school or like age 12 to 18, have an advisory board that meets with the bishop, and I think that's wonderful. Probably a similar thing needs to be enacted for those in college who would be used to asking these students, so what are you going to do with church once you graduate? Thank you. Yes?
You mentioned your experience with music in college.
Yes.
I believe you said you majored in it.
I did.
Music being important to the church, what's your philosophy about music in church, and how do you reconcile the lack of funds at times with funding a music program? Where do you fit music into the church?
All right, and so where are you from?
Oh, St. Martin's.
St. Martin's. Here, okay, thank you. So the question has to do with my education in music and what I see as the role of music in the church and how to empower that when sometimes there are lack of funds. Is that pretty much the question? So yeah, that's a really good question. So certainly for me, a church service without music would be difficult. There are some people who really appreciate that, and I respect that. A lot of them go to the 8 o'clock service where things are quieter and more contemplative. My area was voice. I was a singer, opera, and art song. I believe that anybody can sing, so there can always be singers. I personally think that funding for people to accompany either keyboard, organ, or guitar, what have you, whatever instruments, should be a priority as much as it can. If not, a cappella singing, as long as it's not dragged. I don't like draggy, slow a cappella singing, but a cappella singing can be done by anyone and probably, should be done. Of course, I'm not going to micromanage parishes and about how they do their music programs. I would certainly leave that to the rector or the priest in charge. But when the bishop comes, we're going to sing. So,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.